Now you see this star here. I'm using my cell phone, which isn't very good, but this is a blue star. When I use my Nikon, you can see what appear to be or what look like currents of electricity. I'm not saying they are electricity. They look like it. Now, I tried to run this by someone in my family, and they just got very upset. And it reminds me of the Bible prophecy that mother will be against son, and that if you try to tell someone the truth as per what the Bible really says, they'll hiss at you. Now this here star, now they say the closest star to the Earth is called Alpha Centauri, and it's a little over 3 light years away. Now each light year is almost 6 trillion miles. It's 5.6 or 5.8 trillion miles. I'll round it off to 6. Now, at 3 light years, that would be 18 trillion miles. Now let me tell you this. 1 trillion seconds. Do you know how long it would take for 1 trillion seconds to go by? It would take, according to Google, 33,000 years for 1 trillion seconds to go by. Now in this example, I'm going to use an inch to represent a second. Now if you could make a line or extend some sort of, let's say, magical ruler out in front of you, and you extended it 1 trillion inches towards the horizon, and it got out to whatever 1 trillion inches, how far that would go, it would take 33,000 years for that to come back to you. Now, do you think you could see, even if you aim this ruler at the sky and it went away for 1 trillion inches? You wouldn't be. It would take 33,000 years for that to come back to you. Now, here we have 1 trillion miles. A mile is much further than an inch. If I looked it up, it's quite a lot of inches in a mile. Now, 1 trillion miles, you would not be able to see anything at 1 trillion miles. Now, 18 trillion miles, you would not be able to see that. This is logic. And this is what you discard when you instantaneously believe the liars of scientism. Okay, let's say that was Alpha Centauri, which almost appears the same way, same size, same angular size and whatever. Okay? This, we would never be able to see it at 18 trillion miles. Like I said, think about it. 1 trillion seconds would take 33,000 years to go by. Now imagine 1 trillion miles. Okay, imagine 3 light years, rounded off to 6 trillion miles apiece, 18 trillion miles. You would not be able to see it. Now, the one thing they do to try to get away with this is they try to say that these stars, some of them are 1,000 times bigger than our sun. Okay? And if you got a low IQ or you do not care about the truth, you think they're telling you the truth, you're going to settle on that. But if these stars were that big, the whole, what they call the universe, would be awash in light. There would be no darkness. If this phone could zoom in on all the stars that I see around this one is rather bright. But there's hundreds of stars around it. And when you look at the night sky, there's thousands upon thousands of stars. And if they were all bigger than our sun, 100 times bigger, 500, 1,000, 2,000 times bigger, there'd be no darkness in the sky. They try to tell us that these lights are suns. Now, if I had my Nikon, you could see that this thing here is not a solid object. All right, this one is blue and white, primarily blue. Okay, there's no way that that's even 1,000,000,000,000 miles away. If that were 1,000,000,000,000 miles away, we would not be able to see it, period. That star there is probably less than 1,000 miles away, probably far less. And we are just taught lies. Someone asked me, how long would it take for a trillion seconds to go by? And my first answer was like, a year? I didn't think about it. When they told me that it would take 33,000 years, I Googled it. And of course, I did it 5 times and it said 33,000+ years for 1,000,000,000,000 seconds to go by. And I thought about it. What about 1,000,000,000,000 miles? Okay, if you lined up 1,000,000,000,000 inches, which each inch would represent 1 second, in time to get to the next one, the next inch, you'd have 1,000,000,000,000 inches. And that would take, if you could extend it out as far as it could go, and you started it to retract 1 inch per second, it would take 33,000 years for that to come back to you. And that right there is, you can use this logically to understand that you could never see 1,000,000,000,000 miles. Okay, I should have looked up how many inches are in a mile, but it's a lot. Okay, it's a lot. Okay, there's 12 inches in a foot, and there's 5,280 feet in a mile. So 5,280 times 12 is your answer. So there's thousands upon thousands of inches in a mile. All right. And there would be no star we could see. The closest one they call Alpha Centauri, 3 light years away. We can see it just like we see this star. A little dimmer, but you can see it. And the Polaris, I could get it. They try to say that's 300 to 500 light years away. And each light year is 6 trillion miles. I'll say 5. It's 5.6, I believe. But 300 times 5 trillion miles, that's 150, trillion miles? Or maybe even 1,500 trillion miles. I'd have to get the calculator out. You'd never, ever be able to see that. They're lying to us. These stars really are local, and they are not solid objects. This is not a planet or a sun. What is that, a chemtrailer up there? These are not suns with planets in orbit of them. All the lies I used to believe, it's just terrible. This star with my Nikon or my binoculars is beautiful currents of light. It's not a solid object, and they're semi-transparent, and some are almost 70% transparent. I understand turbulence does cause the flickering, but that's the flickering of the light overall. You can see the currents moving within this body of light. Well, that's all. Just think about what I said. 1 trillion seconds would take 33,000+ years to go by. And you think you could see 1,000,000,000,000 miles away? You know how long it would take for 1,000,000,000,000 miles to come back to you if you put it out in a straight line? Let alone 1 light year being 5.5 trillion miles? And they say that these stars are 10, 15, 20, 100+ light years away. These people are atheist scumbags, and they're not really atheists. They just want you to believe that they believe there's no creator. They worship the pagan false gods of Apollo, Orion, Artemis, Baphomet, and their number one god is Sol, Helios, Ra, the sun. And that's why they replaced the earth as the center of cosmology with the sun.